Good morning. Surprising as it may seem, we are having difficulty getting past a certain hump. It isn't lack of sincerity. I know how earnest you are. It isn't lack of reading or listening. We have had enough words to fill a library. The hump is subtler. We are waiting for a voice. We are poised for a sentence, an announcement, a line spoken into the ear from someplace above the ceiling. We have unconsciously made a god of words and a superstition of guidance. Do you see that? Now let's be honest about it. Every one of us has done it. We have prayed, and then we have listened for syllables. And when none came, we either forced some in the imagination, or we became skeptical and said, well then, nothing is there. And so, with sincerity, we have kept ourselves stalled on the road to a very simple, very safe discernment. Frankly, I can't do it for you, nor can the writings or the recordings do it for you. But together, this morning, let us see if we can get a clear enough light so that we can go forward. The promise set before us is not spectacular, and it is not dangerous. We are not teaching you to imagine voices. We are not trying to hook you into a teacher, a method, or an emotional high. No, we are after sobriety and freedom. We are concerned with the quiet, sane, impersonal impulse of being. Inner guidance is not an audible sentence. It is a recognizable impulse of your own being, and you can learn to discern it safely. Do you follow that? So the practical question that must govern our time together is this. What does it feel like when it is the Christ impulse and not mental chatter, fear, or wishful thinking? If we can answer that, not as a theory, but as an inner recognition, we can stop the business of chasing words and begin to live by grace in ordinary decisions. This is not an argument. This is an experiment in your own awareness. Let us be still enough to observe the difference. The Christ impulse does not argue with you. It does not flatter you. It does not frighten you. It carries a quiet authority, a rightness, a this way or not this, without drama. Often it is no more than a release, as if a knot came loose and there is a clear, unforced next step. It leaves peace in its wake, not a residue of tension. It comes when we cease demanding a performance from God and admit, I can of mine own self do nothing. I am a willing instrument. I'm willing to be still and let you be God. We will not make you dependent on my words or on anyone's words. If I go not away, the Comforter will not come to you. Guidance is not out there speaking to in here. Guidance is the activity of Christ within your very being. God is individual being, your being, my being. The place whereon you stand is holy ground. Do you see that? Then this morning, let us put down the craving for phrases and sit quietly until the tone changes, until the impulse, not a voice, makes itself known. And from that simplicity, we will go forward. Now let us set before ourselves the foundation without which none of this can be trusted. This is not duality. God is not out there sending messages to me down here. God is individual being. God is your being. God is my being. Do you see that? This is not poetry, not flattery. It is the basis on which guidance becomes sane and safe. If God were a distant correspondent, and you, a separate creature waiting by the mailbox of prayer for a letter, then of course you would crave a voice. But if God is the very life of you, the very substance and law of you, then guidance cannot come as something foreign. It can only appear as the movement of your own deepest life, impersonal, quiet, precise. So, practically, when we turn within, We are not trying to get God's attention. We are not blowing a horn to a far country. We are acknowledging what is, the presence that constitutes our being. The Master left us no other way. I can of mine own self do nothing. Father, thou doest the works. Make that a procedure, not a quotation. I, as a human personality with plans and cleverness, can do nothing. Father, the life within me, thou doest the works. And then we wait, not for sentences, but for the Christ activity to stir. An unforced rightness, a release, a restraint, a timing, a yes without excitement, or a no without fear. That is not my brilliance. That is grace functioning as my being. We must clear up a danger here. This is not self-worship. This is not ego intuition or self-authorization dressed in spiritual language. This is the surrender of personal will. It is the end of I want, the end of I think I know. It is the humble consent to be an instrument. I can in my own self do nothing. Father, thou doest the works. I am willing to be still and let you be God. Do you follow that? The point is not to deify the human mind, but to let the divine impulse, already present, find unobstructed outlet. And so, as to hearing. If God is our being, why would guidance knock on the door from outside? It will not. It will appear as a movement in the depths, recognizable by its impersonal quality, never flattering, never coercing, never arguing. It will not need to sell itself. It will simply be there as peace and rightness. Because it is not other than you, it requires no performance, no theatrics. The place whereon you stand is holy ground. The holiness is not imported, it is uncovered. In this light, we can rest. We can stop begging an absent deity and begin recognizing the presence. We can say within, quietly, Father, here I am. Not my will, but thine. If there is an impulse for this moment, let it be felt. Then we do not force. We do not imagine. We wait until the tone changes. God is individual being. God is your being. God is my being. From that oneness, the Christ moves, and guidance becomes trustworthy because it is not opinion. It is the life of God being itself as you. Do you see that? Now, before we go one step further, let us face a very practical fear that sits in the room even when nobody mentions it. The minute we speak of guidance, some of you grow cautious, for good reason. You have seen the harm that comes when people mistake imagination for revelation, when they baptize their anxieties with holy names. You have seen suggestibility, hallucination, and the bypassing of common sense in the name of spirituality. And so we will not indulge that. We refuse the metaphysical platitude business. We will set guardrails, and we will keep them. First, what we are not doing. We are not cultivating auditory phenomena. We are not trying to catch sentences in the air. We are not rebranding intrusive thoughts as divine commands. We are not using spiritual language to dodge responsibility, to avoid therapy or medicine when those are prudent, or to make a virtue of neglect. Do you see that? There is nothing mystical about ignoring wisdom. There is nothing holy about refusing ordinary help while pretending to float on clouds. This way is sober. It is safe. It is simple. Second, here is the criterion by which you may test the movement within. The Christ impulse never inflames panic. It does not puff you up with specialness, grandiosity, or a messiah complex. It does not drive you with compulsion. It carries a quiet authority. It leaves sobriety in its wake, a moral cleanliness, a capacity to do the next right thing without fever. Sometimes it says no, and the no lands as relief, not as terror. Sometimes it says, wait. And in the waiting, you find yourself more honest, more patient, more decent with the people around you. If a so-called guidance agitates, flatters, humiliates, or isolates you from the plain duties of life, set it aside. Do you follow that? Now, as to my part, and any teacher's part, frankly, I can't do it for you, nor can the writings or the recordings do it for you. If any teaching leaves you dependent on the teacher, it has missed the whole point. If I thought these talks would bind you to a personality, I would rather be silent. If I go not away, the Comforter will not come to you. The aim is that you should know how to turn within, not to me, to the presence that is your being, not to an organization or a personality. God is individual being. God is your being. God is my being. Let us keep the ethics clean. And the practice? Keep it plain. Father, is this for us right now? Then wait. If the tone does not change, do not move. Keep your appointment, take your rest, pay your bill, see your counselor, do your work. Reason is not the enemy of grace. Reason is a good servant when the heart is quiet. When the impulse appears, it will be quiet, sane, impersonal. No theatrics, no fireworks, just rightness. The infinite way is not a message to recite. It is an experience to be lived, and lived responsibly. We protect the practice by refusing sensationalism, and we prove it by its fruits: peace, order, gentleness, right timing. That is safety. That is trust. That is the Christ moving as your very being. Do you see that? Now let us lay out, as plainly as we can, the little landscape within where most of our confusions begin. First, thought. Ordinary human thought chatters. It supplies commentary, rehearses what might be said, argues for and against, stacks up pros and cons, and then, dissatisfied, stacks them again. Thought loves a courtroom. It wants to win. It wants to justify. Do you see that? Next, what we often call intuition, quite human, quite useful, senses patterns. It notices tones in a room, weight in a sentence, the look in an eye. It draws a line from yesterday to today and guesses tomorrow. It can be very helpful, but it can also be colored by preference, by fear, by previous bruises. And then, deeper than both, there is an activity which is not ours. Christ activity, grace moving. It does not argue. It does not need to sell itself. It bears an impersonal authority, a rightness that does not come from our cleverness. Not excitement, but peace. Not pressure, but release. Not personal advantage, but rightness. Not noise, but simplicity. Why do we confuse them? Because fear puts on costumes. Fear can masquerade as a warning, thundering in the mind. Don't you dare. And we mistake the volume for wisdom. Desire can masquerade as faith, all glitter and urgency, whispering, surely God wants me to have this. And we mistake the sparkle for substance. Mental rehearsal can masquerade as instruction, We play a scene 10 times in imagination, and having repeated it enough, we call it guidance. Do you follow that? These are not sins. They are just habits. But if we do not name them, they run the show while we stamp them with holy language. So what then are the experiential markers of the Christ impulse? Often it arrives as a settled knowing, no trumpet, no thrill, just a floor under the feet. Sometimes it is a stop, a gentle restraint, a not now, and the relief of not pushing. Sometimes it is a go, but without fever, action that does not tear us from our decency. Sometimes it is a quiet reorientation, a turn of the head you didn't plan, a phone call placed without fuss. And frequently, there are no words at all. There is a tone change in consciousness, as if the air cleared, and with it, a simple next step presents itself. I can of mine own self do nothing. Father, thou doest the works. The shift is from I must fix to I consent. And in that consent, the movement appears. Now, a safeguard. Even when you feel this impulse, and you will, it must not become your badge. We are not to build an identity around being a guided person. The moment we do, pride begins to curate experiences to keep the image alive, and we are back to rehearsal and theatrics. No, we test by fruit. Has patience increased? Has clarity come without cutting anyone to pieces? Has love, not sentiment, but a clean regard for the other's good, quietly taken the lead? Has self-glorification lost its appetite? If the movement leaves you more humble, more willing to do the next right thing without an audience, more at peace with the ordinary, then you have a good sign. Remember, this is not duality, and it is not magic. God is individual being. God is your being. God is my being. The Christ activity is the law and life of that being moving as itself. It will not flatter you, and it will not frighten you. It will free you from compulsion. It will simplify your day. And you will find, as you practice, that the difference between chatter, pattern sensing, and Christ becomes not a theory you argue, but a tone you recognize. Quiet authority, peace, and rightness. Do you see that? Now let us make this very plain, very workable. There is a procedure, not complicated, not dramatic. It begins in the recognition already set before us. I can of mine own self do nothing. Father, thou doest the works. Then, quietly, without pressure, we turn within, not to fetch a voice, not to stage a scene, but to acknowledge presence. And we ask simply, once, Father, is this for us right now? Then we stop working mentally. Do you see that? Ask once. Then be still. What does wait mean? It does not mean spacing out. It does not mean drifting into fantasy, decorating the question with images. It does not mean scanning the ceiling for a sentence. No. Waiting is this: resting the mind from argument, resting the will from pushing, letting the attention settle into its own center until the tone changes. It is a consent, not a technique. I am a willing instrument. I'm willing to be still and let you be God. Do you follow that? Not my plan, not my timing. Thy grace be the sufficiency unto this moment. How shall you know when the answer has come? By its forms, which are few and simple. Sometimes there is a quiet yes, a rightness without fever, the knot loosening, and the next step standing there without push. Sometimes there is a quiet no, a gentle restraint that lands as relief. Not now, and the compulsion falls away. Sometimes there is delay, neutrality, no movement at all. And in that neutrality, the honesty to wait until peace is present. Sometimes there is a reframing. You find that what looked urgent is seen differently, and the urgency dissolves of itself. Do you see? Not a voice, not a vision. A change in tone, a change in pressure, a change in seeing. Now the discipline. Ask once and then be still. If you catch yourself asking again and again, notice what is happening. The mind is bargaining for the answer it prefers. That is all right to see. It is not a sin, it is merely a habit. But do not dress it in holiness. Return to stillness. Drop the handles. Father, I have asked. Thy will in me is sufficient. I wait. When it is Christ's impulse, it will not need persuasion. It will be there as peace and rightness. Safety is in this. If agitation increases, you have slipped into mental chatter. That is your signal. Stop. Either return to stillness until the tone changes, or postpone the decision until peace is present. There is no guidance that requires you to panic. The Christ does not hurry you into confusion. God is individual being. God is your being. God is my being. The activity of that being is the Christ, and it will not shout, it will settle. Therefore, keep the practice simple. Turn within, ask once, wait, and move only on the impulse that bears quiet authority. This is the safest, most direct way. It will lead you out into your ordinary decisions with a new sobriety, a new simplicity, and a freedom from compulsion. Do you see that? Now comes a very practical matter, without which our procedure will not hold. Even after you ask once and wait, suggestions rise up like salesmen at the door. Urgent, dramatic, dressed as warnings or promises. How are we to meet them? In this wise. If I present to you the belief that 2 times 2 is 5, you do not go to war with a person. You do not wrestle a body or a face. Where are you going to meet 2 times 2 equals 5, except within your own consciousness? You turn to the principle of mathematics that already is. You rest in it, and the mistake dissolves, not by argument, but by the presence of truth. Do you see that? So it is with fear thought. Most of the messages that bully you are not guidance at all. They are beliefs clamoring for obedience. There isn't enough, grab now. You are unworthy, prove yourself. Disaster is coming, run. Or the religious mask, God insists you do this today or else. That is not the Christ. That is 2 times 2 equals 5 in spiritual language. The Christ impulse does not demand in that manner. It does not threaten, bargain, or flatter. It is quiet, impersonal, sane. Therefore, learn the pivot. When anxious narratives arise, do not interpret them and do not obey them. Recognize them as appearances, as claims in thought, and return to presence. You can say within, Father, I am being presented with 2 times 2 is 5. I will not meet a person, a bank book, a symptom. I meet this where it lives, in me, as belief. I can of mine own self do nothing. Father, thou doest the works. Then be still. Not law of nerves, not law of temperament, not law of social fear, not law of past trauma as destiny, not law of market panic, not law of the clock shouting deadlines, only God as the law of being. God is individual being. God is your being. God is my being. Do you follow that? What happens when you meet the claim within? The mind quiets. The compulsion drains off. Often, nothing outside has changed, and yet the pressure is gone. Then, and not before, guidance becomes feelable as the natural motion of peace. A clear no may appear and land as relief. A wait may come without fear of missing out. Or a yes may stand up in simple rightness without drama. Try it in the ordinary. The money impulse. Quick, say yes or lose the deal. See it as 2 times 2 equals 5. Meet it within. Wait for the tone to change. You may find the Christ saying, "Not now," and it will save you. The relationship panic. Text back now or it will break. Meet the belief. Let the fever die. Then the right moment, or the right silence, presents itself. The health scare. The mind writes a thriller. Do not read it. Meet the fear as belief. Rest in presence. Then, in peace, you will know the simple next step. Make a call. Take a rest. Without terror driving the hand. We do not hear God by interpreting fear. We meet fear as belief within, and when belief is disarmed, guidance is what remains, peace moving as right action. This is not duality, it is sanity. The place whereon you stand is holy ground. Let the truth of being correct 2 times 2 equals 5, and you will find the Christ waiting right where the noise used to be. Do you see that? Now we make it a life. Not by adding more words, not by richer theories, but by a rhythm, several times a day, 3 to 5 minutes at a time, where you do nothing but turn within. Not to solve a problem, not to affirm, not to rehearse a future, just to consent to presence. 3 minutes is enough, 4 or 5 if you like, but brief, consistent, ordinary. Do you see that? You are not trying to make something happen. You are letting what always is be felt, uncovered, permitted to govern. How do you do it? Sit where you are. Let the breath be natural. Loosen the jaw. Soften the forehead. Drop the shoulders a little. If thoughts parade, let them pass without salute. Do not chase a single one. Do not swat a single one. If you need a door to enter by, use the door already given. I can of mine own self do nothing. Father, thou doest the works. I am willing to be still and let you be God. Then stop working. Not one more syllable is necessary. Turn, as it were, to the sense of presence, not an image, not a concept, a sense, and rest. What are we after? Information? No, we are not collecting sentences. We are crossing a threshold in consciousness, from personal will and mental effort into instrumentality. The sign that you have crossed is subtle and sure, a change in tone. Where there was a fever, a neutrality appears. Where there was pressure, a small release. Sometimes there is a warmth, sometimes a quiet joy, sometimes only the absence of compulsion. This is the comforter functioning, not your cleverness, not your imagination. Do you follow that? It is not dramatic because it is natural to your being. Now a warning, gentle but firm. Do not try to be spiritual. The moment you perform holiness, straining the brow, squeezing out an experience. You have returned to ego effort. This practice is surrender, not achievement. Ask once, if you must ask, then wait. If after 3 minutes there is no tone change, bow and rise. You have kept faith. You have not failed. Grace is not a circus. It is law. Come back again in an hour, or at noon, or mid-afternoon. These micro-intervals accumulated quietly will do what a weekend of frenzy cannot. They will cleanse the atmosphere of your day. Your mind will try its trades, counting the seconds, reviewing the email, auditioning worries. Do not argue. Notice and gently return. Here I am, Father. Thy grace is the sufficiency unto this moment. If agitation spikes, that is your signal. Be simpler still. Rest as awareness. Let thoughts be clouds that do not require a weather report. In time, you will find that the tone change becomes familiar, like recognizing a friend's step on the stair. What follows from this? Decisions simplify without drama. Timing clarifies without forcing. The no that saves you arrives as relief. The yes that serves others arrives without self-importance. God is individual being. God is your being. God is my being. The place whereon you stand, your desk, your kitchen, your car, is holy ground, not because you decorate it with words, but because you consent to be an instrument. Keep the micro-intervals. Let the tone change. And in that quiet change, the Christ impulse becomes recognizable, trustworthy, and beautifully ordinary. Do you see that? Now let us see this on the street, at the desk, at the kitchen table, where it must either work or be thrown out as literature. Guidance is proved in the ordinary. Spending, timing, conversations, commitments, not in mystical moments. The test is not whether you can sit in a glow. The test is whether, at 10 in the morning when the email arrives, or at 7 in the evening when a proposal is set on the table, you can turn within, ask once, wait, and let the Christ impulse govern the next inch. Do you see that? Take money, because money rattles nerves. The temptation is always to consult the bank book as if it were God. Can I afford this? And the bank book, being a book of appearances, shouts either, yes, spend, or no, starve. And both shouts are the same lie, because they come from outside in. Where are you going to meet that? Not in the figures. Meet it within. Turn to your interior being. Father, is this for us right now? And then wait until the tone changes. Often the Christ impulse is restraint. Not now. And in a day or a week, the wisdom becomes plain. The price shifts. The true need dissolves. The right avenue opens without strain. The bank book did not give you permission. The presence in you set the timing. God is individual being. God is your being. God is my being. Supply and direction are of that being. Do you follow that? In relationships, the urge is to win, to justify, to get in the last clarifying word. The mind rehearses a speech and calls it righteousness. But the Christ frequently saves you with a simple, be quiet. Do not send that. Do not explain yourself. Not because you are a doormat, but because right timing is law. Have you noticed? A night's rest in silence can do what 1,000 brilliant sentences cannot. The next day the atmosphere has changed, the heart has softened, or the matter has shown itself unworthy of the energy. That quiet no was not suppression. It was grace-preserving love and dignity. Do you see that? Decisions at work, commitments, the pace of your day. Here, too, the Christ restrains compulsion. The mental chatter says, say yes or you will miss out. Move fast to prove you are capable. The Christ impulse simplifies. Wait. Or it cuts through with a clean no, and the body breathes again. Later, when the dust of pressure settles, you see the mercy. The project was wrong-shaped for you. The invitation was bait. The schedule would have eaten your decency. The fruit tells the story. Peace, order, rightness without residue. Learn to question motive in the instant. Are you moving to be admired? To be right? To secure an image? That is human will with spiritual labels. It argues, it bargains, it requires an audience. The Christ impulse, because it is impersonal, reduces the need to be anybody. You find you can be misunderstood for a night and not die. You can let another shine and not be less. You can do the next right thing without narrating it. That is freedom, not control. This is not an external deity bossing you about. This is the life of your own being, releasing you from internal compulsion. I can of mine own self do nothing. Father, thou doest the works. So make it your habit. When the text demands an instant answer, when the clerk says, today only, when pride heats the tongue, turn within, ask once, wait. If no tone change comes, delay if you can. If you must act, choose the simplest, honest step and return to stillness after. You will come to trust that the no that lands as relief, the not now that quiets fever, the be still that saves a friendship, these are the Christ in operation, practical and sane. And each time you honor it, the ground under your feet feels steadier. The place whereon you stand is holy ground, because you are no longer driven. You are moved. Do you see that? Now let us turn from our own decisions to the holy privilege of being of use to another. The temptation, the very human temptation, is to fix people with words, to arrange their feelings, to prescribe, to perform. But that is the old business, the Savior act, the therapist act without training, the spiritual handyman with a toolbox of phrases. No. When another comes, we make the same transfer we have been making in our own life, from personal doing to instrumentality. Let us go to God together. Do you see that? What does that sound like within? Very simply, Father, let thy grace be the sufficiency unto this individual, this situation, this condition. Then stop working. Do not mentally outline what grace must do. Do not diagnose. Do not strain to produce a result. Be still. I can of mine own self do nothing. Father, thou doest the works. I am a willing instrument. I'm willing to be still and let you be God. Hold no picture, hold no fear, hold no virtue. Rest until the tone changes. This is not duality. You are not inviting a distant deity to visit a suffering stranger. God is individual being. God is your being. God is the being of the one before you. The Christ is the activity of that one being unfolding as sufficiency. Do you follow that? Now, about boundaries. Because we will not play at the metaphysical platitude business. Spiritual support does not replace appropriate human help. If the person needs a physician, a counselor, a hot meal, a ride to the clinic. We are not in competition with any of it. We are not superior to it. We are not heroes. We meet the belief, the fear, the appearance within consciousness, and we let Christ activity operate while we render ordinary kindness. Where are you going to meet 2 times 2 equals 5, except within? So we meet the claim within. We consent to grace. And we also make the call, keep the appointment, sit in the waiting room if needed, without fear, without pride, without control. Do you see that? What are the fruits? Often fewer words, a settled atmosphere, a cleanliness in the room. The weeping that was hard becomes soft. A next step, so small it could be missed. Rest. Call your sister. Write the number down. Stands up without drama. Sometimes nothing is said at all, but the pressure lifts, and in that lift, the practical line opens by itself. The greatest help has often come when there have been no words and no thoughts, only presence felt, and then a decent human act at the right moment. Thy grace be the sufficiency, heard not as poetry, but as law. Keep this safeguard. Refuse saviorhood. Do not collect dependence. Do not take credit. If I go not away, the Comforter will not come to you. Let them feel in your company not your strength, but the reality that God is their being. Then, if they lean, gently straighten them, not to you, but to the presence within themselves. We stand beside, we do not stand over. We support, we do not control. God is individual being. God is your being. God is my being. In that one life, service is simply this: be still, consent, and let the Christ do the works. Do you see that? Now we must say plainly what ethics demand and what grace intends. A man or a woman sins when they leave you in the position of believing that you, in any wise, need them. Do you see that? If any teacher, any system, any organization, any method persuades you, subtly or loudly, that you cannot live unless you have their hand on your shoulder, they have broken faith with the Spirit. If I go not away, the Comforter will not come to you. The aim of all I have said is not to bind you to me, or to a book, or to an hour on a clock. It is to usher you to your own being, where authority lives. God is individual being. God is your being. God is my being. The Christ is the activity of that one being. Therefore, the authority is not out here in a cover, a recording, a personality. These are preparatory. They are fingers pointing. Do not cling to the finger. Turn within. You will say, "But I like the meetings, the words, the atmosphere." Fine, so long as you know that their only purpose is to awaken in you the recognition that the place whereon you stand is holy ground. No more shall you worship in this mountain or in that temple, but in spirit and in truth. Do you follow that? Not in voices, not in visions, not in specialness, in spirit, in the quiet, sane, impersonal impulse that we have called the Christ. Let us leave you with a practice you can own without me. Today, once, not a dozen times, turn within and ask, "Father, is this for us right now?" Then wait 3 minutes until the tone changes. When the quiet rightness appears, obey it in one small act before sundown. Only one. If the impulse is no, honor it and be still. If it is yes, do the next right thing without drama. And then forget the practice and live your day. That is all. Will you master this in a sitting? No. The battle repeats. Suggestion returns. Pride invents costumes. Fear tries a new mask. Each time the remedy is the same, and it is not complicated. Ask once. Wait. Consent. Obey. Tomorrow, repeat. Next week, repeat. The repetition does not prove failure. It proves that grace is law and that we are learning its language by use. Do you see that? In time, the scaffolding falls away. Less talk, fewer props, a truer independence. It becomes so simple that even children can grasp it, because it is not esoteric. It is the natural language of being. God is individual being. God is your being. God is my being. I can of mine own self do nothing. Father, thou doest the works. Turn within. Ask once. Wait. Obey. And walk on, free, unafraid, and unowned by any system or person.